Welcome to the Bret Boone podcast. I'm your host, Bret Boone, and today I'm joined by 2024 Gold Glove winner, and not only that, it was the Platinum Glove, which is a new thing for Major League Baseball. He's coming off 34 home runs and 100 ribbies. Uh, Most importantly, he's carrying on the legacy of number 29 in Seattle, obviously near and dear to my heart. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Cal Raleigh. Cal, thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
29. How'd you get it? Did you ask for it? Was it given to you? I think before you, because when I left there, Adrian Beltre, he was number 28, and I remember leaving, going, well, Adrian, good thing about me leaving, you get your number back. And he was 29. I don't know who else. There might have been some coaches that wore it before you. How'd you get it? Did you ask for it? Because I think somebody you liked, one of your favorite players growing up, was Jason Varitek. He wasn't 29 though.
No, he was 33. Yeah, so when I was, so my uncle wore number 29. He unfortunately passed away when he was really young. And he wore it growing up. So it was kind of a tradition for my dad, my uncle. When they were in high school, they wore it. So I grew up wearing 35 my whole life. It's my dad's number. It was when he was coaching. And, obviously being around him, I always just wore his number. So, and when I got to a spring training where it was, possibly maybe a chance of me making the team, they gave me this like bucket of numbers. It was like, here, you can take any of these numbers, but not any of these numbers. So it's just kind of a bunch of random ones. And I saw 29 in there, so I thought it'd be a good number to go with. And yeah, I think Scott Service, he was 29 before I was 29, and he switched back to 9. I guess that was his number because D Gordon left. So
Well, coaches don't count anyway. We're only talking players. Servy, yeah, one time he was a player. Skippers don't count. Platinum Glove. Congratulations, man. It's pretty
thank you.
awesome. It's your first Gold Glove, and you went big. You went big with the platinum. Tell me, I look back at my career and defense. I came to the big leagues as, everybody was said I was an offensive second baseman. And that kind of always rubbed me a little bit wrong because I was like, no, I'm really good on defense too. I worked really hard on it. And I'll tell you, the first Gold Glove I won, it was almost more satisfying than the offensive, numbers that I'd put up or any award I won offensively, just because defense was the thing that I was pretty passionate about. I loved playing defense as I got older because offense is so hard, as you know. Hitting is the toughest thing, even on the greatest years. Hitting is hard, but you always have that solace. For me was, all right, I can go out and turn a big double play. I can I can win a game with my glove, and it kind of kept me sane when the bat wasn't there. But talk to me how important and how cool it was for you winning that first Gold Glove.
Yeah, it was awesome. Getting the news and getting to share that with my family was amazing. And kind of like you said, it was just getting that award was super special, and it was kind of um, it's something I was working towards because coming out of the draft, people were even questioning if I could stay behind the plate or if I'd have to move to first base, and kind of like like you were saying, I was bat first, and nobody really took me seriously on the defensive side. So I kind of took that as a slight, took it personally, and kind of take receipts, as they say. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you got to find those little, as a ball player, you got to find those little things that help motivate you, help give you kind of that path, and you always remember the people that say that stuff. So
And for what I do now and have to cover, everybody in Major League Baseball, I always have kind of a special eye on you guys up there in Seattle just because of my time there. Um, State of the Mariners. You're kind of, and without knowing you and without knowing the majority of the guys on that team, I kind of look at you. You've kind of grown into one of the leaders of that ball club. And what have you learned? I know you made your debut in 21, but really started being the guy in 22. What have you learned that your first 3 full years in the big leagues?
so I don't know where to start with that. It's been a lot. It's been a lot of growing, a lot of learning, lots of both good and bad. And I think continuing to learn. I think you learn that you're never going to ever figure it out or put it together. And the minute that you think you do have it figured out, or you got it, you got the game, and it'll kick you right in the butt. I think that's the one thing is you can never stop learning. You can never keep getting better, and there's always ways to improve, ways to talk ball and continue to grow as a player. And I've had to learn those lessons the hard way, unfortunately. And um, like I said, you have to stay humble. You have to stay kind of focused and locked in. That way, you're not kind of letting your guard down, and you can keep going and be a consistent kind of baseball player.
A lot of changes in the game since I played, and but now I kind of roll with the punches. You don't want to be that guy that's sitting here my age saying, "Oh, I hate everything about the way that kids play it today." No, it's the game. It's your guys' game. I always say that when people ask me about what I think. I said, "This is the guys in the clubhouse. It's their game right now. It doesn't matter how long I played or what I did." I said, "It's not my game anymore." You gotta kind of roll with I see a lot of positive things the more I watch and have an open mind to the things you guys are doing innovative. I'm actually envious of a lot of things you guys have at your disposal that I wish I had when I was playing. The thing that I won't change my mind on and I think is important now, guys hit at different parts of the lineup. Now in my day, the 3 and 4 guys were the guys. Now a lot of the teams put their best player hitting second. You go to the LA Dodgers, you got a Mookie Betts leading off, you got a Shohei Ohtani leading off. So the game has changed in that aspect. But this year you drove in 100 for the first time. And that's always been a staple. It's been average home runs, ribbies. And I remember talking to great players of my generation, Edgar Martinez. Hey, Booney, your average is going to go up and down all the time. He said, but every time you drive in a run, they can never take that away from you. The game itself kind of poo-poos the RBI now, and it's more an OPS plus world. I get it. But 100 ribbies is 100 ribbies. Was that something still as a hitter in today's game that when you hit that milestone, that's a big deal?
Yeah, it was a huge deal. I kind of when we got towards the end of the season, I had my eye on it, and obviously, much rather trade that in for getting to the postseason. But you know, anytime you see something like that, and you can kind of get an opportunity to do that, you try to take advantage of every chance you can get. So it was definitely special. Kyle Seager, when I first got to the big leagues, he told me, how important it was to drive in runs, kind of like Edgar told you, and you can either drive in runs, prevent runs, or score runs. So you got to find a way to do one of those three things. Is kind of what he was telling us. And if you can do two, or I mean three would be great, but two of those things you can stick around in the league for a long time. And like you said, I think it's a little underrated. Obviously now with all the metrics and analytics and stats you see out there, but like you said, you can't take away driving in runs, and that's a huge part of the game.
It is, and I'll tell you that everybody that can't drive and runs, I don't care what anybody says. There's an art to it. There's an art to a runner on third, less than two, hitting, getting inside, hitting that little duck snort through the center of the diamond for a knock. The great RBI guys of my generation, the Albert Bells, Juan Gonzalez, Manny Ramirez, Edgar. That's what they did, and they just had a knack for driving in that run. Jay Buhner wasn't an average guy for a lot of years, but he drove in 147, hitting 250. I remember talking to Bone, going, "How are you hitting 250 driving in 147?" He goes, "I get the hits when they're out there." So, and I believe there is something to that. Uh, Much talked about for my money a year ago. Seattle Mariners had the best pitching staff in baseball, 1 through 5. When I watch you guys on a daily basis, any one of those guys rotating could be considered a number one. And it's kind of a once in a lifetime staff. In the '90s, I remember going to Atlanta and they had Maddox, Smoltz, Glavine, Avery, Merker. They were interchangeable, and Nagel was a fourth starter for them for a while. But it's one of those once in a lifetime staffs. You get to handle all of them, on the daily. What makes that group that you have there right now so special?
Yeah, I think, they complement each other really well. They feed off each other too. They're always talking, kind of find ways to get better because they're young too. Some of those guys only had a couple of years in the league, and they're kind of growing into themselves, understanding who they are as pitchers and where can they get better. And like I said, they kind of bounce ideas off each other, whether it's grips, pitch types, how to spin a ball, whatever it is. You know how pitchers are and how they talk, so it's a little different. But they do a great job of doing that. And then I think just them being so aggressive. They're aggressive. They're in that kind of mindset on the mound. Go go go, kind of attack the hitter. And once you're ahead, put them away, kind of mentality. And I think that's a really good thing to have. I'd rather have to pull somebody back, pull somebody back as a catcher rather than kind of hype them up or try to push them. Because it's a lot easier to do that. I think so.
And it's cool because I've transformed quite a bit since I've been playing. I looked at the catching position when I was playing, and I thought, yeah, that's important, but it's not that big of a deal. As time goes on, I really appreciate and know how important a catcher means to a team, not only a team, but a playoff team, a great team, a pitching staff. My dad caught for 19 years, and I always, yeah, Dad, you were good, and you won 7 Gold Gloves, and that's great. But you're just a catcher, and you hit 240, and you didn't hit any homers. I played with Dan Wilson in the early 2000s with the Mariners, and I think he was underappreciated. He wasn't the headlines. He didn't have the big offensive numbers on those teams. But the more I get away from it, the more I appreciate the day in and day out what the catcher goes through, how he handles pitchers, the mentality. Uh, that pitcher coming to the ballpark, having confidence, and I can only compare it to my position, second base, the great partners I had at short. It's kind of like, man, when you're working with a shortstop that you really work good together, the mental state allows you to kind of be free and just play your game, make unbelievable plays because you trust your partner. I think from the catching position, you develop that with your pitching staff. But I've realized over the years how important is it, because we talked about the offense. You're not going to hit all the time. But you might have Kirby out on the mound, and he doesn't have his best stuff today, but you're going to find a way to get him through that game and win a ball game, and it can be just as rewarding. Talk about that relationship with you and your pitching staff, and how important that is to be on the same wavelength day in and day out. Because I know as a pitcher, when you don't have your best stuff, man, if I got a catcher back there, I got a partner that I trust. We'll get through this thing today. If I got a guy back there I don't, man, I don't feel as good about my drive to the ballpark that day.
Yeah, I mean it's a huge deal, like you said. The bat's not always going to be there, but every single time I'm back there with the gear on and guys looking at me, they're counting on me to be on my A game, to understand what's going on, be prepared, know the situations, whatever it is. And you don't really get the luxury of taking plays off or pitches off for that matter. So it's always having to be locked in, and part of that comes with preparation, and preparation kind of breeds confidence. And kind of when you can show pitchers that you're prepared and that you understand what point of the game you're in, and kind of leading them through situations, and kind of walking them through it sometimes. And sometimes they can take the reins themselves. But it's a good relationship, kind of back and forth. And you should have to. It takes time too. It can't happen overnight. When I first got to the league, I had to take my time. Like you said, you can't just earn that trust overnight. So it takes time, effort. Just putting in the work with those guys, and whether it's off seasons into spring trainings and into seasons. So building those relationships are huge. And it's nice that we have 5, 6 guys right now that I do have those relationships with, and can keep building those up with.
Yeah, because Danny, speaking of Dan Wilson, who was, like I said, my catcher in the early 2000s, and I know you know Danny very well. He's been with the organizations. He's been the man wearing a ton of hats. He's in spring training, he's in instructional ball, and then he's in the booth calling a game. So you've known Danny for years now. Him taking over as the skipper and defensively, how important Dan was and how big of a part of that game was his relationship with the pitchers. Does that help you as a catcher? I know, and that's not to slight Scott Service at all. Service was a catcher as well, but Danny taking over, how's that relationship?
It's great. Dan was there at my first professional game up in Everett back in 2018, and kind of like you said, he's wore many hats around the system and around this our club, and he's a great guy to go to. He has great perspective. He understands the game really well. You can talk ball with him. He's a great listener. He's great with advice. He's very laid back. Dan, he's a very good down to earth kind of person, and he's never going to he's always going to be very positive with you and understanding, and he's going to help you in any way possible. And so he's been great to work with so far. And obviously 30 games is tough for anybody to come in with that
Right.
amount of time and kind of put their stamp on it. I think he did a great job in the time that he was there. But we've already talked this off season and kind of bounced ideas off each other, and we've talked about where the team's at, and just kind of talking ball. It's just, and that's
Y-
he's the same guy. It doesn't feel any different now that he's manager, and
Right.
it's still Dan. It's I think that relationship is nice to have.
It's still Dan of Steel. And by the way, for those of you listening to the Brett Boone podcast today, Dan Wilson, for as professional as he is and as soft spoken, he's sneaky funny. Danny, don't let him fool you. He's sneaky funny. He'll get in there. He'll get in to
He,
mix it up with you.
yeah, he is sneaky funny. He's sneaky competitive as well. So
Yeah. Uh get to Edgar. Edgar, one of my best friends in the game. I learned a lot from him. He was kind of a mentor to me the second half of my career. And man, if you watched him, he was still great in the early 2000s, but you watch him in the mid 90s hit. I mean, he was just at a different level, especially as a right-handed hitter. I used to tell people, I said, you start Edgar off with two strikes and he'd hit better than three-quarters of the league. Um, he's an awesome guy. He's funny. I call him Mr. Magoo. Uh, but now he's got a big, more prominent role. I think a few years ago he was doing the hit and coach thing, but they brought him back. Uh, how is it having Edgar around? And he's different than people think he is. Like I said, I call him Mr. Magoo, but he's a brilliant guy, and he really helped me on the mental side of the game. Do you think that changes your offense and the perspective from from a roster standpoint?
yeah, he brings this such a calming presence to our hitting group, and especially at a time kind of where things were not going right. We were struggling, kind of looking for answers. Obviously, people were let go, so it was a tough situation there. And for him to come in to bring that kind of like presence, like I was talking about, for it to be more on the mental side and not so much, talking mechanics or talking, um, you know, angles, and how some guys they get caught up in their swing and the actual physical side of that. For him to just kind of simplify it, talk more approach and mindset and kind of what you're trying to do to a pitcher, and I think that was definitely very helpful, and um, it was a nice relief for sure.
I think you're right. When you talk mental side, that's as as I got more experience, we're all wrapped up in our swing and where our hands are, and we got a little lawnmower action. Where our hands are, where our feet are. But it does. It comes down to approach. It comes down to approach over 162 games. How do you prepare for each and every at bat? What are you thinking, leading into the series? It's my favorite part of the game. It's like, who's in the bullpen? What have I done this series? What have I done against that guy in the bullpen? Who's hitting in front of me? Who's hitting behind me? All these things formulate when I leave that on deck circle. I've got a plan, and I found when I had my most success, I stuck to that plan and I didn't waver. And over time, I might get beat on a day, But over time, it seemed like the best outcome would come when I had that approach. Edgar was a big part of that for me, and how I changed my thinking and got out of the physical. We're all different physical. The great hitters get to a position when the ball's in the hitting zone. We all get there the same way. We just start in a different manner, different stances. Um, I want to talk about catching a little bit and how the game has changed. And the naysayers, oh, you got to get off your knee. You got to. I understand how the catching position has changed and why you do get on a knee now. It's for getting framing pitches. When I watch the postseason, and I watched it this year closely, I get it. I understand that. Uh, but I saw a lot of balls go to the backstop in the postseason with a runner on third. Guy was on a knee. Do you think does it outweigh? Is it that important for the pitches? And I'm asking you as a guy that hasn't played in this era, has never put on the catching gear. Does it outweigh getting the pitch over? One goes to the backstop once in a while.
No, I think what I always tell people is that you have to read the situation of the game, and whatever's the most important in that moment of the game is what you need to be focused on. So, like for example, bases loaded, 1-2 count. You got a guy who's going to finish him up with sliders. He likes to bounce the ball. You probably need to be ready for a ball in the dirt rather than be trying to steal a strike. Whereas nobody on base, or say there's a guy on first base. You know he's way in first base down, super slow. All right, maybe I can get on a knee and I can frame a little more, and I can worry. I know that if I block a ball, he's probably not gonna, and it gets away a little bit, he's not gonna run very far. So I think it's just knowing the game and understanding that it's like hitting. You're never gonna have the same approach off a guy, or you're not gonna try to take the same swing off every single pitcher in every situation. So I think it's important. I think sometimes guys do get a little too frame happy, especially with people on base, and they'll just give away, free 90s, and you can't give away free 90s, especially in our game. The guys are too good, and like I said, you can't just be giving those free bases away. So, I think you have to sacrifice a little bit of the framing, especially when people are on base, especially when it's that time of the game. Same thing with people running too. You can't be in a huge framing position or down on one knee and extended when you got Bobby Witt Jr. on first
Right,
base, or
right.
Corbin Carroll, guys like that. I mean, they're going to take off, especially now with the game. I mean, you have to be in a good position, ready to throw and get rid of it as quickly as you can. And if your stance is hindering that, then you're doing yourself a disservice.
I'm really glad to hear that from you. Because I watch and I try not to get too critical. Like I said earlier, I'm not a get off my lawn guy. It's hey, when I played. No, it's not about that. I'm always willing to look at new perspectives, new alternatives. But last postseason really stuck out to me, and I said, are these guys really freaking serious that you got a guy with let's say he's a pretty good split. That's his out pitch, and you're on one knee, and it's going to the backstop, and you're letting a run score. It was mind boggling to me as a catcher. I know I was pretty critical of other second basemen throughout the league. Do you watch other catchers and do you see things like me watching the TV like that can't happen in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, I'm constantly watching catchers, and both good and bad ones. I'm watching, seeing how they do things, how they set up, when they set up, and kind of the game within the game. And you're always watching things like that. Yeah, I mean, this postseason you did see it. You saw it. Guardians Yankees, I believe, was one of the games where that it all happened in one inning. There was like three or four that happened in
Yeah.
one inning, and sometimes some of those are really hard to block,
Hmm.
and but there's sometimes some of those were not as hard to block as well. So um, I think it's just about knowing yourself, and like you said, you can't fully sell out, especially with guys, bullpen guys who are throwing as hard as they can, and the type of guys when they come in the game, you're like, all right, this guy's liable to spike one. This guy, not so much, but you have to at least be ready for it. You can't, you can't really use that as an excuse, trying to frame a pitch, especially with people on base. And um, it's a tricky game, and I get why people are doing it, but I still think that you have to lean towards what's the most important in that situation right now.
And I think from the pitcher's perspective, I'm going, if this is my out pitch and I'm going to bounce or I'm going to spike a slider, man, my catcher's on a knee. Maybe I can't use that pitch, and now maybe instead of spiking it, I hang it. So it's the mental side too, and how that creeps into to how you go about it. Umpires, they've changed a little bit. When I was coming in the game, it was that good old boys club, and it was like you're a rookie, and we're going to go out here with the pitches until you prove that you can hit. And that's just how it was back then. Every umpire, they all had different zones, but the great ones would really establish their zone early in the game. So and I could ask him. I said, "Is that as far as you're going out there?" Yeah. He's going to give 4 or 5 inches off the corner. That means he's not going to give inside. North to south, the strike zone was smaller than you guys have to deal with right now. You're dealing with that high strike. So really the rules have kind of changed. I go crazy, Cal, watching that stupid white box on the TV, and now everybody's an expert on what's a ball and what's a strike when that's not really even how I think it's even measured. Um, but it's brought up a lot of talk now because everybody's an expert and they can say after a game if the ball was outside the box and they were called a strike, that umpire stinks. The criticisms at the highest level that it's ever been. So there's a lot of talk about the robo umps and having a monetized strike zone. And I think whether we like it or not, I think it's gonna come to big league baseball. I don't know if it's in a year, 2 years, 5 years. Do you think that'll change? And for me, I don't know. I don't know if it happens like that, it changes the catching position. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've kind of stayed close to this, obviously, because I'm a catcher and it's affecting my position kind of directly. So, I mean, kind of going back first to, yeah, the box is not right. People don't understand that that's not the real strike zone. It's not even, that's just what the TV program, like Root Sports or Nesson or whoever, Yes Network, whoever that team's TV partner is, they're just putting up a blank box with what they think the strike zone is. That is
They
not the
should
real.
they should
Yeah,
have they should have something on the screen that says for entertainment purposes only. All right.
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No,
Keep
you're
going.
you're right about that, and it frustrates me too because people they don't understand that's not the strike zone, and so I mean that's just a mess in itself, and I just don't think that should even be up there in the first place. You would get a lot less complaining if that was the case. People
Right.
wouldn't understand because people they would just go back to they wouldn't know. They just say what it looks like. And then as far as the robo umps go, I'm very I mean, I'm kind of anti robo umps. I don't think that's a good call. I mean, umps are graded, nowadays. They're not,
Right.
you said beforehand, obviously it's a good old boys club and guys, weren't getting judged on a nightly basis on, how many strikes they missed and how many they got.
Right.
Um and I think the umps now are they're so good. I mean, their misses are minuscule.
People don't understand that, how
They
good they
don't.
really
They
are.
think they think they're terrible. They're not terrible. They're better probably now than they've ever been as far as calling balls and
A-
strikes and a true strike
absolutely.
zone. And it's so minuscule. And with the I haven't heard one good thing about the ABS umpire robot strike zone, especially from the minor leaguers. And I hear it's different in every stadium. And then obviously, how are you going to judge somebody like an Aaron Judge versus Jose Altuve? I mean, how are you going to get those nailed in correctly? So I think they have a lot of work to do before they even, kind of start trying to implement that. And I think in spring training they're going to be doing a few of those. And they've talked about the challenge system, which I think could be a more beneficial um, product rather than doing a full blown ABS. And another thing is, I mean, not that this is it's to the side, but I mean, there's so many. mean, people like watching baseball and like watching highlights of umpires throwing out big league players or
Yeah.
coaches, and you're going to take so much of that away that nobody's ever going to get tossed anymore. I mean, like sometimes, that's the biggest headline of the whole baseball world is because somebody got thrown out and made a whole scene, and it was great for the game, and people got more viewership, and like, I mean, that's just another product of, if they do this, what's going to happen? And now with all the instant replay, guys can't, you know, aren't getting thrown out as much, and it's like, you don't want to ruin the whole thing.
Right, you're taking away the human element, and I think that's what's great about our sport is the human element. That's a part of it. You mentioned they're better than they've ever been. I've had Joe Westman on the show and Teddy Barrett and trying to think Tim Cheatham, and they're all 20-plus-year big league umpires, and they all said the same thing you did. He said, Brett, the umpires are as good or better than they ever been in the history of the game, and it's a shame because they're so criticized with the technology we have. So everybody thinks they know, oh, that guy stinks as an umpire. Well, they have no clue what a good umpire. First of all, it's the big leagues, so you're going to have the best of the best. Yeah, there's going to be shitty umpires. We had our share when I was playing. Some of them are still around, by the way, from my last game. And people ask me, I said, "He's a nice guy. He stinks. He's always stunk. He's always been one of the worst in the game. He's probably be a really good high school umpire, but in the big leagues at that standards, you're still going to have the best in the world. You're going to have the best hitters in the big leagues, and you're going to have the worst hitter. They're still big leaguers. So I'm with you. I think they're better than they've ever been. It's just the critique, the level of critique in that stupid box. At least put four entertainment purposes only. This isn't the strike zone that the players are aware of. And
Right.
then I think you'd have a lot less criticism and it wouldn't be such a thing because I think you're right. I think everybody gets caught up and it becomes about the umpiring every day. And every commentator in the world's talk, oh, that was a bad call. Why? Because it didn't hit the white thing. That's the commentators should know that too. This is not what they're judged on. But it seems like you watch a ball game today and everything is about the umpire and the pitches he missed and they didn't just because of that white box.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, as far as from a catcher's perspective, I mean, you're taking away, say you do go to rumble ops, you're taking away a whole craft of our position, and that's,
Yeah.
making strikes or keeping strikes and trying to make balls look like strikes. And I just believe, if you do that too, you're going to get a bunch of catchers back there that kind of just sit back there, and they're going to be big swingers, and you're not going to it's not going to be a crisp game because you're going to get guys just kind of, it's a bad example right there, but they're just flailing at the ball and they're not trying to make it look good. You're gonna have a bunch of guys it's gonna look bad. It's not gonna be aesthetic to the eye when you're watching the game and you see a guy take a ball that's right down the middle and just kind of plop it down, and it's not gonna look good. I
No,
mean,
I
it's
agree with
just
you. And it's going to cheapen the gold glove for a
yeah,
catcher. It's gonna be
it
like, oh,
will.
you're just going to throw anybody back there, like you said, maybe with a big bat. And I hope that it never happens. But the way the game's going, I've hoped a lot of things never happen, and they continue to happen. Some, to my surprise, I've actually embraced some of the new rules that I thought for sure, because I'm still a purist at heart. And anytime they want to change something about this game, I'm always skeptical. But some of the things recently that they've changed, I've really embraced, and I thought, wow, was I wrong? So now as I get a little bit older, I try to keep an open mind with everything. Um, I've been watching you for a few years, and everybody's going to talk about you've hit 30 home runs the last couple years. You had 27, I think, 3 years ago. So that's always going to be the headlines. But I'm watching. I've always told guys. I said Cal Raleigh. I said he's one of the best catch throw guys I've seen in my day. Pudge Rodriguez catch throw was the best I've seen, but you're really good at it. Um, but the thing I see, and I love the rule they made, the two disengagement. Now, hear me out because I know you don't like that. The two disengagement. The reason they did it was to encourage base stealing again. Well, I think they've done that. We had a 50-50 guy in Otani had uh, Acuna, I think a year ago, steal 70 bases. So I think you're getting the base stealers stealing again. I think that's good for the game. But the real astute base stealers and the really guys that is their craft and they're experts at it man, you're giving them too big of an advantage with the two disengagements. And I know as a catcher, you've got to rabbit it first, and not only a guy that can run, but a guy that knows how to steal bases. It's almost like your chances. I think I got no chance. I could have the best catch throw possible, and it doesn't matter because the rules the way they're set. I think it's great. I think it's encouraged the game. But I'd like to see them as time goes on. Now that we got guys engaging and stealing bases again, man, we got to peel it back to give you a little bit more of a chance as a catcher. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's tough.
But how do you do that?
It's
What do you peel back?
yeah, yeah. It's kind of like once you open Pandora's box, it's hard to close it back up. I mean, it's like you said. You want the game to grow and get better, but you don't want to lose some of the things that make it great in the first place. It's definitely harder with the two disengagements. Um, it's tough because some of those guys they're taking off and they're almost gambling. They're just like, I dare you to throw over. I
Have you
dare
ever
you to throw
seen s-
over.
have you ever seen somebody throw 3 times? Has it ever happened?
It's happened a few times, but honestly, guys they're so afraid of giving them the free bag. When in reality, I mean, if you get a guy on there, you might as well pick over 3 times because he's gonna get that bag. With certain guys, the De La Cruz, Corbin
Right.
Carroll, Bobby Witt, when you get those type elite speed and you've picked over twice, I mean, you might as well go ahead and pick over the third time because you're not going to get them. I mean, they're going to be taken off before the guy even lifts his leg. So that's what you're seeing a lot in the game now is these younger players, they're coming up uh basically kind of like almost delay stealing type where it's like they're taking their hops before the guy even lifts off because they're just placing a bet, which is a pretty good bet, saying that they're not going to pick off again. So, and guys don't want to lose that element of surprise. They don't want even want. Some guys don't even want to get to two pickoffs because they don't want
That's
to
what I was
lose
gonna
that.
say. Right, you pick off once. Now, if you go twice, you're out of picks, and they
Right.
know it, so it's almost like I can't even go to 2, let alone 3.
Yeah.
I
It's
don't
like
know.
some guys are even worried about getting to two, and it's like, I mean, I get it. I understand because it's tough, and you don't want them to get a free 90, but at the same time, you don't want them just running all over you, and it's a tough situation.
City of Seattle. I love that place. I loved I loved everything about it. The fans were unbelievable to me in my time there. Travel's a little long, but the weather's great. You're never too hot. You're never too cool. Maybe in April and September it gets a little cool, but you're never freezing. You're never in Detroit and Chicago and when that wind's whipping in April. So I always thought weather was great because it never got too hot during the summer. Back in when I played in Cincinnati and Atlanta, man, it's hot. You go down to Florida before they had the dome, it was smoking. Texas before they have that new stadium, it can wear you out. Seattle never did that. The weather was always great. You're never sweating. You're never hot. You're never cold. Uh, where are you living in Seattle?
So I've lived in a few different places. I lived I
I
lived
was
in
in Kirkland my final year.
yeah,
Yeah,
I've lived in Bellevue a few times, which is right next to Kirkland on the east side.
right.
I've lived in West Seattle, and then when I was in AAA and they got called up to the big leagues, I stayed kind of in the same place, kind of halfway between Tacoma and Seattle. So I've kind of I've ventured around a little bit, and I love it too. I think Seattle is an unbelievable place, and it doesn't get talked about as much because it's so far away from everything, the Pacific
Yeah,
Northwest, and I'm from the Southeast, and I never, I don't really growing up, you don't really talk about Seattle. All you hear is like, oh, it rains a lot, but you really don't know until you get there. And it's like you said, it's unbelievable. The weather is amazing. The people are awesome. The fans are great, and it's a really beautiful part of the country, and definitely kind of like a second home now, and it's kind of nice to have.
yeah. I'll tell you, you win in Seattle, and oh, it's unbelievable. I go back to those years where we had some really good teams, and the way they came out and the electricity. I remember taking that top step on a Monday night against a last place team, and there was 46,000 people on their feet. That's how that city can be, you know. You got to win and you got to get there, but yeah, it'll always be a special place for me, the Northwest, and I appreciate you coming on, Cal. This was a lot of fun. I wish you all the best. Congrats again on last year, great year individually. Um, and man, you got to. I'm not going to get into this. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm looking at the waiver wire because I got a show to do on Thursday. And I'm like, Mariners have done nothing yet. So I'm not going to put you there, but I know as a player what I'd be thinking. That's not going to go there with me. But I wish you the best. I'll see you probably this summer at some point, and have a great rest of your off season. Uh, Happy New Year.
Yeah,
And thanks for
happy New
coming on
Year.
the Boone Podcast, man. Very
Yeah,
cool.
thank you.
For those of you watching the Boone Podcast, now check it out on YouTube. For those of you listening on the Odyssey app, wherever you download your podcast. Until next time, keep it here.